It is time for the preliminary finals preview. This Saturday night, we will know who is in the 2024 NRL Grand Final. And a lot of people, after the first week, locked in a Penrith and Melbourne decider. But I've got to be honest, after the first 30 seconds of that Manly Chookies game, anything can happen in rugby league. And you are crazy if you're locking that in already. I think both of these prelims, at least one of them, is going to throw a massive spanner in the work, and I guess you'll just have to wait and watch the video to see what I actually mean. We're down to the top four, the teams that played in the qualifying finals. They're going to match up in the prelims. Another year where we got sucked into a team winning outside of the top four. But here we are once again, and let's get cracking with the knacking. And we kick things off with a rematch, probably from every final series that I can remember in my lifetime. It is, of course, the Melbourne Storm. They are hosting the Sydney Roosters. The Melbourne Storm have had 2 weeks to prepare for this game, and the Sydney Roosters have only a 6-day turnaround. The AFL Grand Final is really giving Melbourne a boost in rugby league, which is criminal. But the Roosters, they shouldn't be too battered because, well, they absolutely dominated Manly from the opening kickoff, from the opening set, where they knocked out Tolu Kula, the hero from the week before, and then they knocked out the pride and joy of not just the peninsula, but the entire state. And while I did say that I think that both prelims could throw a spanner in the works, I seriously think that this is the one that's going to be must watch, because the Melbourne Storm will be deservingly favourites, and everything on paper says that they should get the job done here. And while their forward pack hasn't had too bad of a year, obviously the emergence of guys like Trent Lioro and Josh King has been massive for the Storm. They still have shown in some games this year that they are vulnerable, and seeing how amped up, how aggressive and how dominant the Sydney Roosters were in the middle against Manly, I think matchup wise, the Melbourne Storm's middles are going to have to aim up. Now, the good thing if you're a Melbourne fan is you know that you can attack from anywhere in the field, and you've also got the advantage in the long kicking game. Obviously, due to Manly's poor discipline, that shocking penalty count against them last week, ACA didn't really have a chance to get into the grind and use his long kicking game, which also meant Luke Keary and Sandon Smith didn't have to get into a kicking battle against him. But if they do against a team that doesn't seem to give as many penalties away than Manly, in the Melbourne Storm, who we know is one of the best teams at the wrestle and in the grind, then they're going to find themselves into trouble, because that's what they got sucked into against the Penrith Panthers, because it really was just a tale of two different games from the Sydney Roosters, and we don't know which Roosters team is going to turn up, but I think with JWH back, we're going to see a desperate team like we saw on the weekend. So it's an interesting game plan from the Roosters, because I want them to sort of play big man footy, but I also don't think they can afford to get into a grind against a team like the Melbourne Storm, who just need one quick play of the ball. And when you got Jerome Hughes has been the best player this year, and then Cameron Munster and Harry Grant, who are coming off their best games from finals week 1, they can just attack you from anywhere on the field. Just give them a little bit of momentum. So if you're the Sydney Roosters, you want to play big man footy, and you also want a lot of stop starting, if that makes sense. I don't even know what I'm trying to say here, but what I'm trying to say is I think the Sydney Roosters can have a massive chance to win this game if they just dominate the middle like they did on the weekend. And on paper, against the Melbourne Storm, you think that they should. It's going to have to be a big game from some of Melbourne's key middles who have been fantastic all year. I still think Nelson has a step to go to relive the form that he's shown over the past couple of years. But a guy like Josh King, a massive game for him to put his name in a new stratosphere when it comes to ranking the best front rowers in the game and when it comes to Origin next year. What makes this game so good, even with the injury to Sam Walkley, I mean, even if he was playing, you would still give a massive advantage to them throughout the season. But the Sydney Roosters, they have the better outside backs, in my opinion, and they have a much better team on paper in the forward pack. So this is ultimately a great test for the casual rugby league fan, just to see how important a rugby league spine is, because you've got a much better spine in one hand, and then in the skilled outside back positions in the front row, you've obviously got a much better team in the Sydney Roosters. So it's going to be an amazing game. I think the Sydney Roosters are a huge chance, and I don't think a lot of people are giving them enough credit. And to be honest, I'm so sick of Melbourne in a state where no one cares about rugby league doing well. And if they are to bow out here, as well as not making the AFL Grand Final, that would warm this little ranger's heart. But I don't love the Sydney Roosters enough to give them the Manly treatment, so I am am going to tip the Melbourne Storm. I'm going to be riding the boys from Bondi, but I just think when you got Jerome Hughes, Cameron Munster, Harry Grant, and Ryan Pappenhausen, you're going to have to be near perfect in every single category. And I don't know if Luke Keary and Sandon Smith are going to be able to grind out the Melbourne Storm like they were able to just play through Manly after Manly's poor discipline cost them their season. Then we got the best finals team potentially of all time taking on the Cronulla Sharks, who finally won a finals game. The Cronulla Sharks, didn't they look very impressive in that first half? Q in the rack stuff in the second half, that doesn't concern me too much. But what I'm really happy with the Sharks for, and what a lot of people are forgetting in my opinion, is they started off that game rough. I mean, even just, I think in their second set, they got into dummy half, and Will Kennedy had no one to throw the ball to. They look rattled, but there's just that one play from Braden Trindle, who had the game of his life, completely changed it, and the Sharkies went on and dominated a North Queensland Cowboys side, who a lot of people have been saying it, but it is true that they've got the most origin players in the competition. And the Cowboys, well, their bad habits, mainly that defense, came back to bite them when it mattered the most for their season. But the Cronulla Sharks, like I said, just a well-balanced team, and I was waiting for which player would stand up, and Braden Trindle, out of nowhere, delivered the best performance of his career in the biggest stage. And a lot of people are using that to hate on Nico, who just won a finals game. So how about everyone just shuts up? But they are going to have to take on the best team, not just this year, but the best team of all time, coming off 2 weeks of rest. And if anyone can play this game without any pressure in the world, it is obviously the Penrith Panthers. Look, they're still going to want to send Luai and Fisher-Harris out on a high. Nathan Cleary looked great 2 weeks ago, so imagine 2 more weeks with that shoulder recovered. And most importantly, look at what Fisher-Harris and Leota did to that Roosters forward pack, and then look what that Roosters forward pack did to Manly last weekend. It's going to be the biggest game for Toby Rudolph's career, who I thought was great last weekend. Tommy Hazleton, Royce Hunt, who is on his way to the Tigers. A massive chance for the Cronulla Sharks middles to take their game to a new level, going up against the best front row duo of all time. Now, did the Sharkies get that much confidence out of last week? Is that all they needed to finally take the next step after so many years of being in and around that top 4? All the criticism, finally win that first finals game since 2018. Can they knock off the premiership favourites? Can they knock off the best NRL team we've ever seen? Well, not to be dour, but I don't think so. I think the Penrith Panthers, the Cronulla Sharks, got their monkey off their back. They can do that and use that for confidence next year when they get Adam Fanua-Blake, who is the superstar I think that they're going to need to take their game to the next level. But look, maybe this unlocks something in the Sharks. Maybe this unlocks something in Braden Trindle. Maybe this eases the pressure on Nico Hines, who comes out and delivers a Dally M type of game. But I think anyone who has been watching rugby league since 2020, even 2021, if you're going to get butthurt at me because they lost the grand final, when I'm watching a footy side as Nathan Cleary, Jerome Luai, Isaiah Yeo, but most importantly, James Fisher-Harris and Moses Leota in finals football, there's no way I'm not tipping them. So obviously, I'm going to tip the Penrith Panthers here. I do think this is the safer bet out of the 2 games. So I do have, unfortunately, a Penrith versus Melbourne grand final. But I will contradict myself right now and say that I do think there might be a spanner in the works. I think the Sydney Roosters are a much bigger chance than everyone is letting on. I do think Penrith are pretty safe, but I am hoping that something unlocked in Cronulla. And a Cronulla Sydney Roosters grand final would honestly be hilarious. So we will wait and see. By this time next week, we will have the grand final preview and predictions. 2024 has absolutely flown by, ladies and gentlemen. So let me know who is making it to the big dance in that comment section down below. Smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't yet already, and I'll see you, of course, in the next one.